California, 1984. The sun dipped below the horizon. A blanket of darkness fell upon the Golden State. Unbeknownst to its residents, a nightmare was about to begin, a terror so profound it would etch its mark on the very soul of a city. This wasn't a storybook monster lurking in the shadows. This was real. This was the chilling reality of Richard Ramirez. The air grew thick with fear. Whispers turned to screams. The Night Stalker was no mere figment of a troubled mind. He was flesh and blood, leaving a trail of unimaginable horror in his wake. Homes, once sanctuaries, transformed into prisons of dread. Sleep, a respite from the day, became an agonizing gamble. The rules of society crumbled. No one was safe. No one was immune to the pervasive terror that seeped into every crack and crevice of Californian life. Behind closed doors, families huddled, united by a shared fear. The boogeyman had come to life, and his name was Richard Ramirez. His eyes, devoid of remorse, held a chilling emptiness. They were the windows to a soul consumed by darkness, reflecting a mind warped beyond comprehension. This was the face of evil, captured in a single haunting image. Richard Ramirez, the man who would become synonymous with terror. Born in the dusty plains of El Paso, Texas, Ramirez's early life was a breeding ground for the monster he would become. His was a world marred by violence, a chaotic symphony of abuse and neglect. It was within the walls of his childhood home that the seeds of his depravity were sown. A troubled childhood, often cited as the root of evil, was a reality for young Richard. But it was the sinister influence of his older cousin, Miguel, that would prove to be a turning point. Miguel, a decorated Vietnam War veteran, returned home scarred both physically and mentally. He introduced Richard to a world of unspeakable brutality, sharing tales of wartime atrocities that would forever taint the young boy's mind. The line between right and wrong blurred. Richard's moral compass, never fully calibrated, spun wildly out of control. He became desensitized to violence, numb to the sanctity of human life. The grotesque became his fascination, the macabre his obsession. It was a descent into madness, fueled by a toxic cocktail of nature and nurture. Nightfall in Los Angeles, the city, usually buzzing with life, held its breath. A palpable fear hung in the air, as heavy as the humid summer night. Unseen, unheard, the Night Stalker stalked his prey, his presence a chilling premonition of the horrors to come. His motives, shrouded in mystery, seemed as random as his victims. He preyed on the innocent and the vulnerable, striking terror into the hearts of those who dared to close their eyes. From the quiet suburbs to the bustling city streets, no one was safe from his grasp. His calling card was fear, his weapon of choice, terror. He reveled in the suffering of his victims, his sadistic nature knowing no bounds. With each attack, the body count rose, and the grip of fear tightened its hold on the city. The Night Stalker, once a whisper in the darkness, had become a deafening roar, a chilling reminder of the fragility of life. The police, working tirelessly to solve the case, were always one step behind. Ramirez was a phantom, a specter moving silently through the night. He left a trail of blood and terror in his wake, but his true identity remained elusive. Who was this monster who haunted their dreams? The answer, when it finally came, would shock the world. But for now, the shadow of the Night Stalker loomed large, a terrifying embodiment of evil in its purest form. El Paso, Texas, a city where the scorching desert sun beat down on a landscape as unforgiving as young Richard's life. Born on February 29, 1960, Richard Ramirez entered a world ill-prepared for the darkness he would unleash. His childhood home was a battleground where violence reigned supreme. His father, Julian Ramirez, ruled the household with an iron fist. Julian found solace in the bottle, his rage amplified by each swig of cheap liquor. Richard endured brutal beatings that left him bruised and broken. His mother, Mercedes, sought solace in prayer while her son was tormented. Amidst the chaos, Richard sought refuge in the dusty streets of El Paso. As Richard grew older, he gravitated towards the fringes of society, finding kinship with those who, like him, had tasted the bitter fruit of hardship and neglect. He drifted further away from the stifling confines of his home, seeking solace in a world that mirrored the darkness brewing within him. He began experimenting with drugs, their intoxicating effects offering a temporary escape from the harsh realities of his life. It was during these formative years that Richard crossed paths with his cousin, Miguel Ramirez, a figure who would cast a long, sinister shadow over his life. Miguel, a decorated Green Beret, had returned from the battlefields of Vietnam a changed man. The horrors he had witnessed had left an indelible mark, transforming him into a shell of his former self, haunted by memories he could not escape. Miguel regaled Richard with tales of the Vietnam War, his stories a gruesome tapestry of violence and bloodshed. He spoke of the thrill of the kill, the ease with which he had taken human life, his words laced with a chilling detachment that both fascinated and horrified his young cousin. He showed Richard Polaroid pictures of Vietnamese women he claimed to have tortured and killed, their mutilated bodies a testament to the depths of human depravity. Under Miguel's twisted tutelage, Richard's fascination with death morphed into something far more sinister. He learned to compartmentalize, to detach himself from the suffering of others. He began to see violence not as a last resort, but as a source of power, a way to exert control in a world that had always seemed determined to break him. Richard's teenage years were a descent into petty crime and disturbing behavior. He dabbled in drugs, seeking reprieve from inner turmoil. Breaking into homes for the thrill, he blurred the line between right and wrong. At 13, he witnessed a horrific act that altered his life. Miguel, in a rage, killed his wife, shattering Richard's world. Richard watched, detached, as his cousin cleaned the blood-soaked carpet. The seeds of darkness took root, transforming him into something monstrous. The years that followed were a blur of escalating chaos and despair. Richard's behavior became increasingly erratic, his anger simmering just below the surface. He dropped out of school, abandoning any pretense of a normal life. He drifted from one dead-end job to another, his mind consumed by dark fantasies. His family, already fractured, crumbled under the weight of their shared trauma. By the time Richard Ramirez left El Paso, he was a powder keg waiting to explode. He was adrift, untethered from love and family, free to embrace the darkness within. Los Angeles, 1984. Beneath the city's glittering facade, a different reality stirred in the shadows. The air, thick with smog, carried an undercurrent of unease. Richard Ramirez, drawn to the city's underbelly, roamed the streets, a predator stalking his prey. In his place stood a monster poised to unleash his rage. The city became his hunting ground, its inhabitants his unsuspecting prey. Ramirez's killing spree started on April 10, 1984. He murdered Mei Leung, a 9-year-old Chinese-American girl, in the basement of her apartment building in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco. Leung was with her 8-year-old brother and looking for a lost $1 bill when Ramirez approached the girl and told her to follow him into the basement to find it. Once they were in the basement, Ramirez stabbed her to death with a switchblade. The killing was not linked to Ramirez until 2009, when his DNA was matched to a sample obtained at the crime scene. On June 28, 1984, 79-year-old Jenny Vinca was found murdered in her apartment in Glassell Park, Los Angeles. She had been stabbed repeatedly in the head, neck, and chest while asleep in her bed, and her throat slashed so deeply that she was nearly decapitated. Ramirez's fingerprint was found on a mesh screen he removed to gain access through an open window. This, his second known murder, established his pattern of breaking into homes, committing particularly vicious murders, and frequently burglarizing his victims either before or after killing them, which was mainly to support his drug addiction and pay his rent. The brutality of the attack sent shockwaves through the community. The intruder had vanished into the night, leaving behind a trail of blood and terror. 9 months later, on March 17, 1985, Ramirez attacked 22-year-old Maria Hernandez outside her home in Rosemead, shooting her in the face with a .22 caliber handgun after she pulled into her garage. She survived when the bullet ricocheted off the keys she held in her hands as she lifted them to protect herself. Hernandez played dead until Ramirez left the scene. Inside the house, her roommate, 34-year-old Dale Yoshi Okazaki, heard the gunshot and ducked behind a counter when she saw Ramirez enter the kitchen. When she raised her head to get a look at what had happened, Ramirez, who was waiting for Okazaki to peek over the counter, shot her once in the forehead, killing her instantly. Within an hour of the Rosemead attack, Ramirez pulled 30-year-old Silian Veronica Yu out of her car in Monterey Park, shot her twice with a .22 caliber handgun, and fled. She was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. The two murders, and an attempted third, in a single day attracted extensive coverage from news media, who dubbed the attacker, described as curly-haired with bulging eyes and wide-spaced, rotting teeth, the walk-in killer and the valley intruder. The Night Stalker's crimes grew more depraved, targeting men, women, and young couples. Ramirez reveled in terror, forcing victims to swear allegiance to Satan, leaving satanic symbols behind. The city held its breath, praying for the nightmare to end. On August 6, 1985, Ramirez drove to Northridge and broke into the home of 30-year-old Chris Peterson and Virginia Peterson, aged 27. He crept into the bedroom, startled Virginia, and shot her in the face with a .25 caliber semi-automatic handgun. He then shot Chris in the neck and attempted to flee. Chris fought back while avoiding being hit by 2 more shots during the struggle before Ramirez managed to escape. The couple survived their injuries. On August 24, 1985, Ramirez broke into the home of 30-year-old Bill Carnes and his fiancée, 29-year-old Inez Erickson, through a back door. Ramirez entered the sleeping couple's bedroom and awakened Carnes when he cocked his .25 caliber handgun. He shot Carnes 3 times in the head before turning his attention to Erickson. Ramirez identified himself as the Night Stalker and forced her to swear she loved Satan as he beat her with his fists and bound her with neckties from the closet. After stealing what he could find, Ramirez dragged Erickson to another room before assaulting her. He then demanded cash and jewelry and made her swear on Satan there was no more. Before leaving the home, he told Erickson, "Tell them the Night Stalker was here." Both survived their injuries. Erickson gave a detailed description of her assailant to investigators, and police obtained a cast of Ramirez's footprint from the Romero house. The stolen Toyota was found abandoned on August 28 in Koreatown, Los Angeles, and police obtained a single fingerprint from the rearview mirror despite Ramirez's careful efforts to wipe the car clean of his prints. The print was positively identified as belonging to Ramirez, who was described by police as a 25-year-old drifter from Texas, with a long rap sheet that included many arrests for traffic and illegal drug violations. The identification of Ramirez's print was described as a near miracle, as the system used to identify him was recently installed, as well as the fact that the system contained the fingerprints of criminals born after January 1, 1960, only 2 months before Ramirez was born. On August 29, 1985, law enforcement officials decided to release a mugshot of Ramirez from a 1984 arrest for auto theft to the media. At the police press conference, it was announced, "We know who you are now, and soon everyone else will. There will be no place you can hide." On August 30th, 1985, Ramirez took a bus to Tucson, Arizona to visit his brother, unaware that he had become the lead story in virtually every major newspaper and television news program across California. After failing to meet his brother due to him not being home, he returned to Los Angeles early on the morning of August 31st. After noticing a group of elderly Hispanic women fearfully identifying him as El Matador, Ramirez saw his face on the front page of the newspaper La Opinion with a headline calling him Invasor Nocturno, English night invader, and fled in a panic. After running across the Santa Ana freeway, he attempted to carjack an unlocked Ford Mustang but was pulled out by angry residents. Ramirez ran across the street and attempted to take car keys from Angelina de la Torre. Her husband, Manuel de la Torre, witnessed the attempt and struck Ramirez over the head with a fence post in the pursuit. A group of over 10 residents formed and chased Ramirez down Hubbard Street in Boyle Heights. They soon restrained Ramirez and relentlessly beat him. At around 8 a.m., police were called over a disturbance in the area with few other details. Police quickly arrived on Hubbard Street and took a severely beaten Ramirez into custody. Jury selection for Ramirez's trial began on July 22, 1988. At his first court appearance, he raised a hand with a pentagram drawn on it and yelled, "Hail Satan!" On August 3, 1988, the Los Angeles Times reported that some jail employees overheard Ramirez planning to shoot the prosecutor with a gun, which he intended to have smuggled into the courtroom. Consequently, a metal detector was installed outside and intensive searches were conducted on people entering. Survivors took the stand, reclaiming their stories. Whitney Bennett and Bill Carnes recounted their harrowing experiences. Each testimony chipped away at Ramirez's indifference. The courtroom became a space where the echoes of terror reverberated. On September 20, 1989, Ramirez was convicted of all 43 charges. 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. During the penalty phase of the trial on November 7, 1989, he was sentenced to death in California's gas chamber. A slow smile spread across his face. "Big deal," he muttered. "See you in Disneyland." The slam of the heavy steel door echoed through the cold, sterile corridor, marking the beginning of Richard Ramirez's final chapter. San Quentin State Prison, perched on the edge of the world, became his new home. Death Row, a place where hope went to die, awaited. June 7, 2013. The news, when it finally came, was met with a strange mix of emotions: relief, closure, a sense of justice served, but also a lingering unease, a reminder that some wounds never truly heal. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, the embodiment of a city's worst nightmares, was dead. He had spent 23 years on death row, his appeals exhausted, his fate sealed. He died not in a blaze of glory, not in a dramatic showdown with the state, but quietly, almost anonymously, in a hospital bed at Marin General Hospital, his body ravaged by lymphoma, a disease that seemed a fittingly ironic end for a man who had inflicted so much pain and suffering. His death, though long anticipated, sparked a flurry of media attention, a brief resurgence of the fear and fascination he had once inspired. The survivors of his attacks, their families forever marked by his crimes, offered a mix of reactions. Some expressed relief, others a sense of emptiness, still others a quiet satisfaction that the man who had haunted their dreams was finally gone. But even in death, Richard Ramirez could not escape the shadow of his crimes. His name, forever etched in the annals of true crime history, continued to evoke a visceral reaction, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within the human heart. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more true crime stories.